All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast. We are recording here on Easter Monday for our Wednesday, April 20th episode. We got episode number 46 here, and we're going to start directing our attention to the rookie draft. So we're going to be talking rookie prospects, what we think of them, where we want them to land maybe. And then we're going to do our own little rookie mock draft here with very little information, obviously, prior to the NFL draft. But before we get started on our episode today, number 46, we'll throw it to the fellas and see how the boys are doing here at the start of our Easter holidays. So we'll go to Armin first. Armin, enjoying a nice little break so far or what?
Yeah, I went up to my parents' farm and enjoyed deep fried turkey over the weekend, and it was delicious. And for the first time ever on Easter, we had fries. So, you pull out the deep fryer, you got to just deep fry everything, right? So no mashed potatoes, but fries, and they were delicious as well. So I've been eating a lot. I might be like 10 pounds heavier already. So
that's just a good fit, the fries. You're making gravy anyways for the turkey, so might as well dip the fries in some gravy. I kind of like that. Might be onto something there, Armin.
Oh, yeah.
And Zach, how about yourself? How's the Easter holiday so far for you?
Yeah, with the with different families, the in-laws and such, it's been busy couple of days, but I'm looking forward to this week and taking some time to ourselves, kind of unwinding from a busy couple of weeks at school and getting ready for some university finals. So should be a good couple of days here. But Armin, you mentioned you had turkey. I'm wondering, are you guys more turkey people or ham people for your holiday meals?
We're usually more of a ham family. Whenever we do a roast or in the roaster or anything, we do ham or oven. But we have a deep fryer, my wife and I, and my parents are like, "Hey, we'll get the turkey if you bring the fryer out to the farm." And we're like, "Oh, sure." Also, my dad works at the canola crushing plant in Nipawin, so he's able to get all that oil for free. So.
Yeah, I know we're on YouTube and you can only really see shoulders up, but by judging by my barrel, I'm a ham and turkey guy. I'll definitely dabble in both. Speaking of deep fried turkey, I remember, was that Armin 2 years ago? We did a little bit of a Friendsgiving type thing around was it American Thanksgiving? I think we ended up doing something. You guys deep fried the turkey there. Oh man, that was hands down one of the best turkeys I've ever had. I couldn't believe how juicy that turkey was. It was unbelievable.
I know it. Once I did it once, it's hard to go back. If I'm making a turkey, I'm deep frying it.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah.
The only thing is you can't do the stuffing inside of it though. Hey, I'm a stuffing guy.
Yeah, that's the downside, is you miss out on that stuffing. But I think it's worth it for that delicious turkey that you get out of it. And that crispy skin that you get on top too.
Yeah.
Ooh.
When I was still teaching there, I always do the attendance questions, and one of the questions I asked was, "What's your favorite part of Thanksgiving?" You get some kids, "Oh, it's friends and family or whatever," but I'm like, no, like I'm talking about the food here. Like, is it the cranberry sauce? Is it the gravy? What do you want? And
no one cares about your family.
If I'm drafting of the Thanksgiving meal or Easter meal, I guess too, they're kind of very similar, but I'm going 101 stuffing. That's my pick. Might be early. There's no revenue or value there taking stuffing 101, but yeah, that's my pick for sure.
No, my 101 is bone-in ham. Oh.
Yeah, and then in the slow cooker and it just melts apart. That's pretty good too. I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
We had the first time, myself and my fiance. Well, I shouldn't say myself. It was more my fiance and the mother-in-law. But we had everybody over for the first time to host for our own time. Usually it's over at their place, but we had their family, my family. We had everybody because we got engaged during COVID. So we haven't had an opportunity for all of our families to kind of get together. But we had I think it was roughly about 35 people over for Easter at our house. So it was a little bit of chaos last night. So kind of nice to be able to sit at the computer and sip on some coffee and talk football today. Kind of just relax a little bit because it was chaotic. But that's all right. It was nice to be able to get some family together and kind of see everybody, because the last couple of years, obviously, it's been difficult not to be able to see everybody. So I'll take that for sure. Before we get started here, obviously, happy Easter, everybody. Hopefully, enjoyed a safe and relaxing holiday so far as we get back to the grind. hats. I mentioned we still got some hats for sale here. If you're looking for a 306 fantasy football hat, we got them for sale. You can message us on social media and we'll be able to hook you up with a 306 fantasy football hat. And we also have another opportunity if you're looking for a 306 fantasy football hat. We got the draft coming up April 28th, which means we're doing another draft day giveaway. So we're going to be giving away a 306 fantasy football hat along with 4 rookie cards, premier rookie cards from last year's 2021 rookie draft. And then we also are going to be giving away a free listener league spot in our upcoming 2022 fantasy football listener league. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be giving away that on social media. So we'll be paying attention to our socials, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook. And you can follow the instructions there to enter and get a chance to win a good little draft day giveaway. So come draft day, we'll announce that the winner just shortly before the NFL draft kicks off. So stay tuned for that and hopefully get your hands on not only some 306 fantasy football merch, but also some good NFL product and then an opportunity to be a part of the charity league upcoming season. So it's an awesome opportunity and hopefully we get see your guys' names in there. So without further ado, we'll get started here on some insiders and headliners, and a little bit of news from this past couple weeks.
I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Well, I think we'll start with this one. We've quite a few contract extensions and signings to talk about. But I think the first one we're going to talk about is a little bit unfortunate news. And this one rolled out shortly after we actually had discussed our previous podcast there. But Dwayne Haskins, a quarterback from the Pittsburgh Steelers, passed away at the age of 24. He was getting prepared for the upcoming season in Florida, and unfortunately was struck by a vehicle while he was walking on the freeway, and ended up passing away at the age of 24. He was a former first-round draft pick and quarterback of the Ohio Buckeyes, and unfortunately, a young prospect, a young player, obviously NFL player, a husband, a teammate, was obviously passed away at the age of 24. So unfortunate news that you don't really like to talk about. And obviously, we like to talk about the fun stuff of fantasy football, but obviously, it has fantasy football implications, but it's a lot bigger than that. So unfortunately, I do have to talk about that. But I don't know if you guys pay attention on social media, but the amount of outpour that came from this, from former teammates, current teammates, friends, that was just like, he was a team guy, his family first, teammates first, he was shirt off your back type of guy. But I think that shows a lot about his character and who he was as an individual. I think I was listening to another podcast and they talked about, it always takes a tragedy or something unfortunate to happen where you start hearing these stories. But there was the outpour was unbelievable. I guess that's more or less where I'm going with this. But it's unfortunate news to start the podcast off with.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Jordan. I know coming out of Ohio State and then during his time with the Washington football team there, the analysts and the talking heads questioned his work ethic, questioned his maturity on numerous occasions. But you're absolutely right. After his untimely passing, the amount of good stories, the good anecdotes about him from friends, teammates, coaches, certainly shined a light on a person that we didn't get to know very well, considering all of the negative stories, the negative news that the talking heads had highlighted. So it was nice to hear that he was so well respected and so well loved by his friends and teammates.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. Moving into, I guess, a little bit back into the fantasy aspect here. We have a couple signings and a couple extensions to talk about. Stephon Diggs, star wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills, signed a 4-year extension worth $104 million with a $70 million guarantee. So he is going to be connected, obviously, to quarterback number 1 for the last 2 seasons, Josh Allen, for the foreseeable future. So now I'm going to ask this question, I guess, kind of just, I was going to go through this relatively quickly, but I think this is worth kind of mentioning. Now, coming back and obviously reflecting a little bit of our crazy offseason we've had so far, where are you going to rank, Armin, if you had to say right now, where are you going to rank that Stephon Diggs in the dynasty wide receiver, or this upcoming redraft, I guess you must go with that, the wide receiver category next season? Because he did come off, I guess, a little bit of a disappointing season in comparison to where he was in the 2020 season, but he's still connected to that premier high velocity quarterback where we're seeing those guys like, Tyreek Hill, we're seeing Devontae Adams. They're losing those connections that they have with those quarterbacks. So where would you be ranking Stephon Diggs and maybe this upcoming year for the wide receiver class?
Even though last season was a bit of a down year for him, he still put up a pretty decent season. If I recall, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but he was still near the top tier of the wide receivers. So like moving forward, I think you got to keep him in that tier, and he bumps up a little bit closer to some of those guys like Adams and Hill, who may have a little bit of question marks around them, and you might be a bit more willing to maybe take that shot on Diggs if he has the guy that he's used to there.
Here's his numbers here: 103 receptions, 1,225 yards, 10 tutties, and 11.9 yard per reception.
Yes. See, that's still a great season. Like it wasn't the boom season everyone was hoping you'd get from him when they drafted him, but like that's still very good. And you gotta put him right in that top tier. Like you'd probably have Jamar Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, Cup, Debo kind of going ahead of him. But then when it comes to Adams and Hill here, there's a lot of question marks, even DK Metcalf, right? Like some of those guys have question marks around them. Terry McLaurin, he's the more sure thing, and he's still got it. Definitely redraft. Go for him. If you believe in him and you want him, take him. But Dynasty, he is 28. I'd only really buy him if you're going for the chip in the next few years, but he'd still be worth buying because he still will have some decent production in the next few years ahead of him.
Yeah, he finished wide receiver 7 last year, and obviously 2 wide receivers that finished in front of him, Tyreek Hill at 6 and Devontae Adams at 3. So, I mean, I can only see that Stephon Diggs, I think, is going to be drafted ahead of those 2 in this upcoming season. Like Cooper Kupp, okay, drafted in front of Diggs. Debo Samuel, you can make a case taking in front of Diggs. Adams, okay, question marks. Justin Jefferson, sure. Chase, sure. And then there's Stephon Diggs right there at, wide receiver 5, which comes with some pretty good draft capital, which could be, that maybe that back end wide receiver or back end first round, early second round kind of draft capital. If there's still guys that believe in Hill and Adams, you might even be able to sneak into that back end second. You never know.
Yeah, the way it falls, you could end up getting him for a bargain.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not the re-signing or extension you wanted to see as a Pats guy there, hey, Zach?
I didn't figure he'd be going in anywhere. So, yeah,
no harm, no foul.
Great player. And the way this arms race is going in the AFC, the Bills would have been foolish to let him go for anything but a king's ransom. So it makes total sense to me.
Here's another guy you're talking about you didn't expect to go anywhere. Here's a name that everybody expected to go somewhere. It was Brandon Cooks, wide receiver of the Houston Texans. His name was connected to so many different trade conversations and landing spots with necessary wide receivers. Like the Packers were throwing around. Like he was expected to be on the move, and Houston put an end to that by locking him down for a 2-year extension worth $39.6 million with $36 million guaranteed. So he ended up with a nice little chunk of change there to stay put with Houston. And I think connecting on that, I guess a little bit of a connection that he developed with Davis Mills. So I think Davis Mills needing obviously some weapons to see what they've got with him moving forward. What do you think of this? Do you think if you're a Cooks owner, are you happy with him staying put, or would you have rather seen him on the move?
I think this is good for Brandon Cooks. I really do. Looking at where he finished last year, he finished according to Fantasy Pros, he finished as wide receiver 21 on the season with 141 points. That is only 40 points behind Mike Evans, who is wide receiver 6. Davis Mills didn't take over until later into the season. So, there's a chance had Mills played the full season, Cook's going to finish quite a bit higher than he did. Looking at their depth chart right now in Houston, you'd be hard pressed to find their second and third receivers. So Cooks is going to get a lot of targets, I'd imagine. He had 134 last year. I would not be surprised to see that number go up, even if they do bring in a rookie in this month's draft. I think he's, by far the number one target there in Houston. And I would imagine him to get peppered with targets. So certainly in a PPR or half point PPR setting, I think that's a good spot for Cooks to be.
I think try and find a more disrespected wide receiver in the NFL. Like, he's just been all over not even just NFL, I guess, and fantasy football as well. He's just been passed around all these different teams, and all he's done is just been a wide receiver too his entire career. Like, he's just put up numbers in fantasy, and he always slips in drafts, and you always find him with value. Now, in another situation where I don't think anybody expects Houston to be a juggernaut offense by any stretch of the imagination, I imagine he'll be slept on and disrespected in drafts again, and you can probably pick up Brandon Cooks at a premier value, especially if they end up adding a pretty good wide receiver in this draft this year. Like, obviously, we're going to talk about these premier wide receivers and how deep I think this wide receiver class is in this season. If they add another receiver, Brandon Cooks, he might get disrespected even more. He might even become more of a value, and that's just kind of been the MO for Brandon Cooks throughout his fantasy career. So it's definitely a name that you're going to be wanting to monitor as we enter into the fantasy season. Another extension here. This AFC West is just ridiculous, but Derek Carr signs an extension, 3 years, $121.5 million. Obviously, they added Devontae Adams, gave him some money. Now Derek Carr, they're going to lock him down, and this AFC West is just going to be ridiculous. But I saw somebody commented on our post there, I had a good giggle. That's a lot of money to pay somebody for fourth place and the fourth best quarterback in the AFC West. But it's going to be absolutely unbelievable, and to see who comes out of that division first of all. But to be able to see potentially what this is going to do to Derek Carr's career by adding his collegiate companion there of Devontae Adams. So I think we're talking, Scott Fish is coming up right away. Fingers crossed. Hopefully get into the big dance there this year. But that might be a really good name in a super flex league to try and pick up that Derek Carr late for your quarterback too. They're giving him the money. He's got a weapon. They're going to be, I would guesstimate, they're going to be behind in games, so they're going to have to air the ball a little bit more than usual to try and compete with these high-end teams. But what are you guys thinking about the Derek Carr signing?
I think it's a good signing as far as the economics are concerned. Looking at the quarterback contracts here on Over the Cap, they have him as currently the 5th highest paid quarterback behind the likes of Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. All those guys are signed long-term currently. Now that Derek Carr signed his contract, the next batch of quarterbacks that I foresee getting extensions would be the Joe Burrows, the Kyler Murrays, maybe Tua, if he can put it all together, Justin Herbert, those types of quarterbacks that have been in the league now for 2, 3, 4 seasons. And as we've seen with all positions this offseason, the floor for most of these big contracts is the contract that was signed prior to yours. So now all of these contracts are going to be based on the Derek Carr contract, the Deshaun Watson contract. So these good young players, they're going to be signing above the likes of Deshaun Watson, above the likes of Aaron Rodgers. So I think in a year, we might look back at this and say, that Derek Carr contract didn't look great in the moment, but now it could be a bargain.
Yeah, especially if he produces. I know you commented a bit on it, Armin, about that connection with Carr and Adams. But are you expecting big things or what? I know you want to maybe recap what we talked about last episode.
They should be able to surpass what Derek Carr has done in his career so far. I think what I said last episode, right, was Adams was probably going to see a little dip in production, but to still expect him to do well and have that connection with Derek Carr. And like you were saying, QB number 2 for Derek Carr in Superflex, that'd be incredible. Last year, people forget he finished number 13 last year. He actually put up almost 5,000 yards and had 23 touchdowns. Now he's got to clean up his picks a little bit. He had 14, but with Adams there, I expect Carr's output to increase, and hopefully he has Waller for an entire season rather than seeing him go on and off all the time, right? So I expect Derek Carr to produce more this year. I'm not saying he's a top tier QB by any means, especially fantasy wise. That's just not who he is, but he's a good QB who's gonna have a long career in the NFL. Surrounding him with weapons like Adams and Waller and Renfro now as well, who had a breakout last year. He has the weapons. He's benefiting from a team that's trying to put weapons in front of him, and you should see a bump in his production, even though he's not the best QB. It's hard for a decent QB not to have production when he has those weapons.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Talking about adding a couple weapons here. Here's one weapon that maybe was unexpected, but we were expecting Green Bay to add a weapon in a wide receiver. And ended up signing Sammy Watkins to a 1-year deal worth up to $4 million. Flip the coin over under. Do we think he makes the starting? Do we even make the 53-man rosters upcoming season? Who knows? I guess bring him in, see what he's got. He's been kind of bounced around a little bit here now since he's left Kansas City. And he went Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, and now to Green Bay. Hasn't been able to stay healthy, and I think he's just trying to chase after that first round draft capital he had was in 2013. I'm trying to remember if I can. I forget his draft year, but regardless, an addition in the Green Bay wide receiver room, which we also are expecting a addition in throughout the draft, which we'll kind of maybe foreshadow here a little bit as well. And then AJ Green re-signing with Arizona to a 1-year deal as well. So two 1-year deals to be able to continue on in this upcoming season.
I actually like that AJ Green signing. He moved teams like Julio Jones did last year, and he had a much better season with Arizona than Julio did with Tennessee. And I think he almost actually reached 1,000 yards. If I look back at the stats here quickly, AJ Green. Anyways, yeah, last time I looked, yeah, he had 848 yards. So not a bad little season for him last year. And I think he improves on that this year.
Well, especially losing Hopkins for most of the season too. Somebody had to step up there in that room. Now you're losing Christian Kirk. There's rumors that they're going to add somebody in the draft as well. So moving into the season with hopefully healthy Hopkins, we're all expecting. We talked about Rondell Moore last episode, maybe taking that, that big step forward. So we'll see. That's a nice veteran presence to keep in there, and obviously on a cheap 1-year deal. It doesn't hurt the old salary cap too bad for that elite veteran presence. He had a very long elite career, so hopefully be able to take some of these younger wide receivers under the wing and kind of teach them how to be a professional in the league. Talking about that, we are just shaping this episode up a little bit differently. I know we usually have the keep trade cut, and then we have the hot takes at the end of the episode. Just with our rookie draft or our rookie conversations here, they do run a little bit on the long side, so we're going to trim up the keep trade cut because we'd be focusing on some of these players that we'd want to keep trade cut and some of these rookies. So we're going to take that information and put it into our conversations in our mock draft. And then we are going to shape up the hot take. And we're going to talk about maybe I guess kind of a hot take, in a sense of who we think that our teams are going to take in the first round. So it is a little bit of a different episode, this episode, and we'll get back to the old drawing board, I think, on the next one. But we're going to have a little bit of fun with this one. So how this is all going to work, folks, is we are going to do a 2-round rookie draft. Now, we have very limited information other than what we've gone through their collegiate productions and then going through some of the individual mock drafts kind of so far. Now, we don't know the teams they're going to land on. We don't know what rounds they're going to go in. All those things are going to implicate the decisions we make in our rookie drafts, because draft capital matters and teams matter, right? Along with the collegiate production as well. So we're going to go through a draft based on solely what our research has shown and who we like as prospects. And we're going to do 2-round drafts. So 12 picks, 2 rounds. We're going to talk about 24 prospects here. We're allocating 3 minutes for conversation per first round pick, and then 2 minutes on a second round pick. So we'll have a little timer to give a 15-second warning to be able to wrap up the prospect. And then we're going to rotate through who we pick. So we did a little bit of a random draw at the start, and Zach was allocated the 101. I was allocated the 102, and then Armand allocated the 103. And then we're going to kind of recycle and rotate through in that particular order. So we have, I guess, any questions or comments there, fellas, before we get this going? I'm excited about this one. We did a little bit different last year, but I think this is even better. We'll obviously share our analytical aspects to it, but then feel free to chime in, I guess, if you agree, disagree, or any of that sort. So without further ado, we've got a special message, as we always do when we start the NFL draft. And with our particular draft, Roger Goodell brings a nice little introduction for us here.
Ooh. Thank you all for being here, and for all of you tuning in across the country to welcome our future NFL stars. So if you're ready, are you ready? Let's get it started. The draft is now officially open.
There is nobody that's booed more. No commissioner, I don't think, has booed more than Roger Goodell. It'd be there's I don't know, maybe there is, but it's just such a trademark. You know, I think NFL draft, you think of booing Roger Goodell.
I mean, in the NHL,
is Manford?
Yeah, Manford's pretty bad too.
They don't do a live draft, eh?
Well, it's not.
It's televised.
Yeah, I loved when was it the 2020 draft and they did it virtually from the homes, and Goodell, he's doing it from his basement. He goes, yeah, there's a tradition none like the other, and then he pans to a bunch of fans, and they're booing automatic, and that's just that's 2 and 2 go together, NFL draft and booing Roger Goodell. But I guess without further ado, 101, Zach.
So keep in mind, this is a super flex draft, and I think with that in mind, in most super flex drafts, you're going to see this player and the next player go off the board in either order. And for me, I think the best value presented in a super flex format is at quarterback. So with 101, I am taking quarterback Malik Willis out of Liberty. Willis is 6'1", 219 pounds. He reminds me quite a bit of Trey Lance. So before I go any further, I just want to mention, while Willis is not my favorite quarterback in this draft, he is worthy of a top 2 pick in Superflex leagues. And I think in order to get him, you have to take him there. I can't imagine him slipping outside of the top 2 picks. Fellas, I want you guys to let me know if this reminds you of anyone in particular. A quarterback goes to a university, goes to a college, he gets beat out for the starting job, and then he transfers to another program where he has lots of success, gets attention, and becomes a first-round draft pick. Does that remind you guys of anyone in particular?
The only name that came into my mind was Lamar Jackson, but
so that is the exact story of Joe Burrow. Went to Ohio State, got beat out by Dwayne Haskins, actually, transferred to LSU. That's also what happened with Justin Fields. Went to the University of Georgia, got beat out by Jake Fromm, transferred to Ohio State. And that is also the story of Malik Willis. Committed to Auburn, got beat out by Bo Nix, transferred to Liberty. And it was at Liberty that Willis experienced a large amount of success. This past season, he had a completion percentage of 61.5, 2,859 pass yards, 27 to 12 touchdown and interceptions, and a passer rating of 100.2. But where Willis really shined was on the ground, where he put up 878 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns. And he had more broken tackles than anyone in the nation with 89. That is including receivers and running backs. I mentioned earlier that I think Willis compares nicely to Trey Lance's last season at North Dakota State. In Lance's last season, he had 2,786 pass yards, while Willis had 2,859. Lance had 28 passing touchdowns. Willis had 27. Rush yards, Lance had 1,100, and Willis had 878. Lance had 14 touchdowns, and Willis had 13. We all loved Lance last season in rookie drafts, so I don't know why we wouldn't love Willis this season in the rookie drafts.
For those of you that were like, oh my goodness, Super Mario's popped up. That's our 15-second warning. So it's the same in Super Mario. You got the final minute. You're trying to wrap up your level. We give it a 15-second countdown to keep ourselves on track for the 3-minute takes here. But like Zach had mentioned, if you're going to get him, you got to take him early. I think he might be one of the higher drafted quarterbacks that come off in the NFL draft. So it's going to be similar to that in the Superflex rookie draft. So now I'm on the clock at 102. And just one thing I'm going to mention here before we go to, just keep in mind that we're not doing a mock draft based on the NFL, right? There's going to be some products that come off the board that are going to be really good for NFL, but might not be as good for fantasy, right? And Zach mentioned maybe Malik Willis on the ground might bring an extra aspect to fantasy, like we talked about the Russian quarterbacks in comparison to other quarterbacks that are maybe in more pocket passers or less mobile. So keep that in mind that we're talking from a fantasy perspective where maybe not so much obviously the NFL. But now myself on the clock at 102. Zach hinted at it. It's going to be 101, 102 for most people. And I'm taking the latter of 102, made my decision very easy. I'm going to take the running back from Iowa State, Breece Hall, 102, RB number 1 off the board. At 5'11", 217 pounds, he comes with good size and good speed, running a 4.3, 940. And he is an incredibly athletic specimen. Now, not only does he bring a ability for in the receiving game, but he also brings a great contact balance and is very difficult to bring down at times. Now, his contact point is hit and miss, right? There's other running backs in this class that are stronger, harder runners, but he isn't as able to bring it down as compared to other running backs as well. That was one of the knocks on obviously RB1. I think he's the best RB in the class. I think he comes out with a 3-down set. I think he's going to have an opportunity to land in a position like a Buffalo where he can bring immediate fantasy success. There's also connections to possibly going to Houston where he will have a huge workload as well. In high school, he had a huge production of 4,200 yards, 61 touchdowns, as well as a huge production in the wide receiver game. As a freshman, he had a huge production with almost 900 yards and 9 touchdowns, as well as work in the receiving game. As a sophomore, he had over 1,500 rushing yards, 21 touchdowns on 279 carries. And then as a junior, he had over 1,400, almost 1,500 rushing yards, 20 touchdowns, as well as 96 receptions for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns as well. So he comes with a skill set to make himself readily available in not only the NFL, but as well as fantasy drafts. He can catch the ball, he can run. If he can work on his contact balance a little bit more and not being able to be brought down as quickly, that would be a huge step for him as a prospect. But he is a smart runner. He's an elusive runner. And obviously he comes with a great athletic background. So I think Breece Hall, especially in non-superflex, is going to be for sure the 101 taken. But in superflex, he has the competition to go 101, but I also think he can go 102 as well. I'm going to leave 30 seconds here for a rebuttal.
Go ahead.
I agree with you that he is the full package. I think he is really good at a lot of things and does them at a very high level, but he doesn't have anything that is elite in my mind. And then also I noticed in watching his film, he has that 4.39 speed, but it seems like he gets away from defenders and then they catch back up.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's one thing I saw in his work was like he struggles to get the edge, and if he does get the edge, he doesn't kind of turn the jets on. He has to almost read the blocks, find the gap, and hit the hole. And the other notch I do have on him too is he's not a great pass blocker. So to be able to get that 3 down work, you got to be able to pass block, right? You're not just going in 3rd down just to catch the ball. You got to be able to pass block as well too. So that's something that if he can take that next step, we could see a true 3 down full workhorse back. But I think also adding to an offense that's going to give you that capability, I think would be a huge addition as well. But that is why I'm taking Breece Hall at 102. We're going to put Armin on the clock at 103.
All right. At 103, I am taking Kenneth Walker III, RB from Michigan State. He is 5'10", 210 pounds, and runs a 4.38 40. That we just talked about how Hall doesn't really sustain his speed. Walker does. And in my mind, I'm almost tempted to rank Walker above Hall. It's really close to me actually on how close they are. He's a really exciting football player to watch. He's not that full package that Hall is, but he runs hard and he makes defenders look foolish. He has great jukes and amazing contact balance. If you watch his film at all, you watch tacklers coming in and they need to wrap him up to take him down. He can't be taken down by just a check or someone just hitting him. He needs to be wrapped up. And it also should be noted that he has about 800 less college snaps than Breece Hall, so he's not as worn down as Hall. I honestly think that his ceiling is higher than Hall's. I think his best season in the NFL would be better than Hall's best season in the NFL. But this is what I also told to a coworker of ours, is that I think Hall over his entire career is going to have more great seasons than Walker. But I think Walker's ceiling when he reaches his peak is going to be a higher peak than Hall.
We had a similar conversation last year. I'm going to pipe in about the Javonte Najee Harris conversation. I do remember having that almost identical conversation here. We were both quite high on Javonte. Didn't quite have the gusto to put him ahead of Najee, but now you look back and think, there's a rhyme or reason there. And maybe address his receiving work arm a little bit. We maybe haven't seen a whole bunch yet, but watching his film, he definitely has that capability, correct?
Yeah, like he didn't get a lot of catches in college, but any catch he had, watching it on film, it looked good. It looked smooth. You watch some of the combine and pro day stuff, and he's making tough catches that are coming over top of his back where they're a little awkward even for a receiver sometimes, and he's able to haul them in as well. And with that speed he has, he is able to run decent routes because he is shifty. He has great agility. So if he learns to run the routes, he can definitely do it. And he's not a small guy either. And that can help as well. Another thing that I did want to talk about is some guys that run like he does, you might be worried about injury, but because of his size and his less college snaps, I'm not as worried about injury as other guys that run like him.
Give him the full 3 down package. That's for sure. It has the possibility at least to do it. So hopefully the draft capital kind of follows it as well. On the clock at 104, Zachary.
This is a spot I didn't envision myself being in. I really thought Armin was going to take a receiver at 103. So I am quite pleased that I have the pick of the litter. And with 104, I am taking wide receiver Jameson Williams out of Alabama. Williams is 6'1", 181 pounds, and he profiles in my mind as Will Fuller plus. Somebody that can beat you deep, but also contribute in the short to intermediate passing game. I really think he'd be the surefire number one receiver in this year's draft had he not tore his ACL in the national championship game. And because of that injury, I don't think he'll be the first receiver taken in the NFL draft, even though he's getting a lot of hype in the last couple of weeks. I think it's more likely that he catches on with a team in the back half of the draft, a team that has a established and entrenched quarterback, which will really help his career early on. Him landing somewhere like Green Bay with the 22nd overall pick, him landing somewhere like Kansas City with the 28th or 29th pick would just be gravy. He finished the year at Alabama with 78 receptions on 115 targets, good for 1,500 yards, and a massive 20 yards per reception and 15 TDs. Williams possesses the rare combination of top-end deep speed, but also elite level agility. He ranked 5th in the nation in deep yards with 671 and 4th in the nation in yards after the catch with 725. One of Williams' biggest knocks against them is his slight frame. And that should remind you of another Alabama receiver from last year in Devontae Smith. And we saw pretty quickly that Smith's slight frame didn't really hinder him any, and I don't expect it to hinder Williams either. Per reception perception, 10% of Williams' routes were the 9 route or the go or the fly, and 11.5 of his routes were also the 8 or the post. So over 20% of his routes were the deep ball, and then 30% of his routes were the short game. So 20% were the slant, and 11.5 were screens. So Alabama either got the ball in his hands exceptionally fast, or they let him win downfield and they got the ball in his hands behind the secondary. I think Williams is somebody that, you know, he may have a lower floor than a Olave or a London, but his ceiling is exceptionally high. And I would certainly take the risk on Williams before the others. And hopefully I can hit a home run and get like a Tyreek Hill type of player out of him.
That's you hit the nail on the head there for me, Zach, as I kind of enter into my pick here too. Just because they get the earlier draft capital wide receiver doesn't mean they're going to be the best for fantasy for us. I think we're going to be in a position where some of this draft capital, these players are going to skyrocket as we enter in the back end first round. Just because a player gets taken in the first 10 picks as a wide receiver doesn't mean they're going to have the better fantasy output or fantasy perspective as somebody that gets taken in the back end of the first, right? And there's some teams that lost their wide receiver ones that you mentioned, like Green Bay and Kansas City, that could be buyers here for these positions. And that makes that just fantasy stock rise immediately because it comes with a premier quarterback and an opportunity to be successful immediately because there is vacated targets.
Yeah, I could see there being a scenario where whichever quarterback goes to one of those, or sorry, whatever receiver goes to one of those quarterbacks, Rodgers or Mahomes, instantly enters the conversation as wide receiver 1 in rookie drafts. Similar to CEH going to Kansas City, where prior to the draft, he was, a middle of the first round pick, but after that draft capital and after that landing spot, it really rose.
I agree. Armin, you had something to add there?
I was just going to say he could slide because of that injury, and just take advantage of his slide. If he ends up falling to you in drafts, don't be wondering why the heck people aren't taking him. Just take him. If you're not in win now mode and can wait for half the season for him, do it. He'll be worth it. That's
an excellent piece of advice there. Lots of fantasy owners are immediate production, right? You want that immediate production and just and be able to see what you bought for, right? Whereas people might want to pass on, like you mentioned, Armin, and you can jump on that and you can wait and it might be worth its weight in gold. No pun intended there. 104 on the clock. That's myself. Yeah, this one, Zach kind of mentioned it. It was with the wide receiver starting to kind of, here's that gap where they're going to start go. I thought maybe Armin would take one, but I know he's very high on Kenneth Walker. I myself am very high on this person, and he is my wide receiver 1. So I was very thankful that he's still on the board, and I'm going to jump on him at the 105. So I'm going to take my guy from the University of Southern California, and I'm taking Drake London. I love Drake London. I loved him during his prospect run. I love him during the draft season. I love him on whatever team he gets drafted by. He's an athletic specimen coming in at 6'4", 219 pounds. He's a big body receiver, and he has jumps. Like, he can get up in the air, and he specializes in that 50-50 ball. And a big body receiver that can get up and can get that ball with a 78-inch wingspan and 33-inch long arms. With the vertical he has an opportunity to be an absolute fantasy gold mine. So like I mentioned, he's a jump ball specialist, but he's also really great in run blocking. And as a wide receiver, if you play any sort of football or you're a wide receiver coach, you know you're not getting the football every play. That's just your position, right? You're going to get the ball, a small piece of the pie in your offense. But what you do when you don't get the ball is just as important as when you get it. And coaching staffs loves those type of guys, the guys that are willing to put their nose to the grindstone and go out and be aggressive blockers. Those are guys that are awesome in locker rooms, and coaching staffs love you. And that's what Drake London is. He's an awesome receiver, as an athletic specimen, can jump, win those 50-50 balls, and he is really good on underneath. I know there's talks maybe he has issues with separation on the vertical routes, but that's a very limited knock because he didn't get a lot of opportunities to be able to create that separation because he ran a lot of underneath and middling routes. Being able to block, being aggressive are things that are going to help NFL franchises. I think there is a really good opportunity that Drake London is the first wide receiver taken in the NFL draft. And he will for sure be my first wide receiver that I take come fantasy season. I'm a sucker for USC guys. I'm a sucker for big body receivers. And I really love the prospects of Drake London. He did come off a really, really bad ankle injury, which people were concerned about, but he looked really good during USC's pro day. So I'm not too concerned about that. He had good numbers as a freshman with Michael Pittman and Amon St. Brown, who are both fantasy, I wouldn't say superstars, but are very good NFL wide receivers. And then last year as a junior in his 6th game before he had Amon St. Brown as well, who's competing against targets. So I think he, much the same as Pittman and Amon St. Brown, has the potential to be a really good NFL wide receiver.
Man, what are you going to do if he ends up with the Lions?
I'll take another USC Lions guy and I'll just sink with the ship, I guess. If the Lions get him at 32, there's going to be a party in the Carrier household. I'll tell you that first. There's no way he slides all the way to 32, but yeah, I'd be really excited.
So you're not concerned about his speed at all? Cause that 4.55 40 concerns me a little bit, especially when like a lot of the receivers we're seeing now are it's kind of a standard to be in the 4.4s. Doesn't scare you at all?
No, I'm not too concerned about it because that's not necessarily his specialty, right? Like I talked about, he still can create separation. He's actually a really good route runner, and he's a really, really smart route runner. So I think you're going to be playing to his specialties. He's not going to necessarily be that downfield field stretcher, which maybe for a big body receiver isn't really what you want, right? Like I want to be able to underneath and the medium routes create separation based on your route running and your size, and then be able to go up and get those balls. So I like the fact that he isn't necessarily just a field stretcher, a 9-route type guy like Zach mentioned. I think he's going to bring a lot of aspect in maybe necessarily not the deep routes, but that's not necessarily a knock to him. I think it's more maybe a pro to his specialties and abilities. So that's kind of my 2 cents. But
I got some bad news for you, Jordan. Your Drake London scouting report reads word for word for Lance Zierlein's scouting report for N'Keal Harry coming out of college. Can't separate downfield, wins in the short and intermediate routes, jump ball specialist, uses his body to block out defenders, good run blocker. That reads word for word Nikhil Harry scouting report.
You
Well,
probably have
hopefully-
that memorized, eh, Zach?
Yeah,
Oh, it was
you can read that on Zach's tombstone, I think.
cause of death, more likely.
Yeah, I hope that's a one-off and that's not Drake London Emo. If it is, then I'll sink with the ship, I guess. But that also is a very similar take to, I think, Treylon Burke's conversation as well too. But that's a conversation for another day here. We have now next on the docket is pick number 106, and we have Armand on the board.
All right, with pick 106, I am continuing this wide receiver train, and I am going Garrett Wilson, wide receiver from Ohio State. The run started. At this point, you don't want to miss out. There's a little bit of depth yet at RB, and no runs have started besides the first top two guys. So I think you gotta go with Garrett Wilson, where I think this is kind of where that first tier of wide receiver ends for this draft, and getting him at this point here is great because you're getting you don't have to make the tough choice with those top three guys, and you get whoever falls to you at that third spot. He is fast. He runs a 4.38. He has production. He has good hands. He catches in traffic really well. He goes up and he gets the jump balls as well with a great vertical leap. And he's a great route runner. Now, I normally you got to question what does it mean when somebody says a great route runner, because you hear that a lot when you're looking at the draft, right? Does that mean that they actually know how to run the routes properly? Which in my mind, really, you should be able to, at the NFL level with the coaches, be able to get everyone to run proper routes. I think it matters on your foot speed and your agility. And if that is what is making you have great route running, that is what's special, not the fact that you actually are able to know, okay, after 5 steps, I need to cut here, right? And then make another cut here. It's being able to do that and then also be deceptive with your body. And I think Garrett Wilson does a great job of the other aspects of route running, not just the being able to take the steps and know where to go, but being able to be deceptive, get open and get pretty wide open, I think, as well. So I like him. I think he is special in that he can do all of the different excel at all of the different areas of the field when it comes to the receiving game, and can be a do-it-all receiver, which is a great weapon to have. It's kind of what you're looking for in your wide receiver one. Whereas some of those one-trick pony guys who may be really elite at that one thing kind of become more of a wide receiver too, because you need to wait until the defense kind of caves in on your wide receiver one before you take advantage of their elite skill set.
It's another name that's kind of destined for that back end first, thrown around, maybe the Philadelphia Eagles. I've heard his name a little bit. Obviously, that might not be as premier as somewhere like Green Bay or Kansas City, but where do you have him kind of pegged to land, Armand?
Oh, I haven't looked that deep yet, but you got to think he has potential, just like London, to be the first wide receiver off the board. Williams, like we were saying, might slide. So he could go in the middle first for all we know. Philly would be a good fit for him, I think, along with
Devontae Smith.
Yeah. But we'll see. There's lots of wide receiver needy teams out there.
Absolutely. Zach is going to be on the clock at 107. We'll see where he's going here.
Well, I am certainly thrilled with how this draft is shaken out. I am able to get my wide receiver 2 here at 107 as the 4th wide receiver off the board. I am in love with Chris Olave, wide receiver from Ohio State, standing at 6 feet tall, 187 pounds. And in my mind, he profiles quite similar to a Tyler Lockett. One of the best indicators for rookie receiver success in Dynasty is the player profiler breakout age. Olave broke out at 19.2 years old, which is in the 85th percentile, which is a good indicator for possible future success. Last year, Olave could have declared as a junior, and in my mind, would have been a first-round pick in the NFL draft and one of the first 4 or 5 receivers taken. He decided to come back to Ohio State, and he's in a very similar spot this year as he was last year. Many people consider him one of the best route runners in the draft, which allows him to create separation and get open at all levels of the field. Per PFF, since 2019, on targets 20 yards or more, he ranks first nationally in receptions with 29 yards, with 1,054, and touchdowns with 19. This is a guy that can win at all levels of the field. This year, he finished with 65 receptions on 101 targets, good for just shy of 1,000 yards, just under 14.5 yards per reception, and 13 TDs. Much like Williams, he has a slighter frame than other wide receivers that we've mentioned and that we will mention. And he does need to keep himself free of the DB in order to win. He's not going to bully anybody at the point of contact like N'Keal Harry or Drake London. Olave does have a blazing 40, a 4.39 40 at the combine, but he does need to add weight in order to win in the contested situations. In my mind, he is likely the safest receiver in this class as a result of his route running, sure hands, and separation, but he does not have the highest ceiling. And I think that belongs to Jameson Williams. I do want to mention, Jordan, you mentioned you do like the bigger bodied receivers. I think that stands in contrast in my mind to preferring the smaller body receivers. And I saw this on Twitter a few days ago and I was crying, laughing. The person mentioned Wilson and Olave as Timothy Chalamet and Tom Holland, and Drake London and Burks as like a Jason Momoa or like The Rock. And I think I definitely prefer the Chalamet Tom Holland body type to your body type of Momoa and The Rock.
Yeah, but what's not to like about Tom Holland? I mean, come on.
Oh, I just watched that the new Spider-Man last night. What a guy. I just got to point out here that you guys both like receivers that are similar to your own body type.
Hey, just an absolute rig. None of these wide receivers have barrels though, so I don't think that's too accurate here. Yeah, I'm gonna keep on this train here. Does anybody else have anything else to mention there before I move on to the next pick?
I do want to add, Armand, you mentioned that you think Wilson is the cutoff for the top tier of receivers. I really think Chris Olave belongs in that discussion as well, as being a pack of 4, tier 1 receivers. And I think it's going to really show in the NFL draft where different teams are going to have these guys rated so differently across the board. It's not like there's going to be a clear and fast number 1 like last year with Chase. I think it's going to be really team dependent on who takes these guys, and it's going to really depend on where they go. That's going to be a good indicator for their success.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna go here because I'm gonna build off of that, but I'll start my pick here. I'm on the clock at 108, and I'm gonna keep the wide receiver train going here. Wide receiver 5. I'm gonna stop the slide. And there's gonna be some people that are gonna be listening to this that are saying, I can't believe what you're telling me right now. He's sliding all the way down to wide receiver 5. And that's Treylon Burks, wide receiver from Arkansas. Some people even have him rated as high as their wide receiver number 1. I'm not in that category. I think I do have him rated as the wide receiver 5 in the class. Much the same as Zach mentioned, I do like Olave. With Zach taking Olave, I think that made my decision real clear. I'm going to stop the skid of Burks. And I think this is a risky pick. he's either going to have an incredibly high ceiling, and I think he also has a really, really low floor. He's a lot of knocks against him to being a professional in the NFL, but he has a lot of things that people really are attracted to. He's that big body receiver, 6'2", 225. He is a big body, but he's kind of teetering on almost a little bit on the too big side, unless you're an absolute specimen like a DK Metcalf. He's also got a big wingspan, long arms, much the same as Drake London. He specializes. He's good at the 50-50 ball, but some knocks against him is he does have sloppy routes, some issues with the route running, relies on the physicality a little bit too much, and the slow 4.55 40. Now, he is a rig. Like 4.55 is on the slow side, but he is 225. Like he is a monster. So to just really isolate the 4.55 to a man that's 225 pounds, you can't knock the guy too much because he's huge. He's a big body. He does have a limited route tree, but his hands are incredible. If you watch the pro day, or it's not the pro day, the combine, when he was running those routes, and just it was so fast, so smooth, so quick. He caught that balls in his hands, tucked. It was impressive to watch. We're talking about in our group chat. I was just like, man, did you guys watch him? Like, he's so good. But then he ran his 40 and he was like, oh, and that dropped. But it's almost becoming like, I thought he was maybe overrated a little bit, in a sense where he just didn't have the full package in comparison to other wide receivers. But now he's dropping to, I think, a really good value because his ceiling could be absolutely incredible. And I saw a recent mock where Treylon Burks to Green Bay at pick 22. And that's where, in a conversation where that Treylon Burks stock might skyrocket once again into that high first, super flex, even high first single quarterback rookie draft. So we're in a situation like Zach mentioned where I think here's the tier break for me at Treylon Burks. After that, I think there is a gap personally, but it's all going to be draft capital locations depending on where you're going to variety these guys. But I do think Treylon Burks has some flaws, but he also has those really appealing attributes that could make him a dominant wide receiver one. So that's my 2 cents on Treylon. If you guys have anything to add.
See, what I noticed was when you watch his film, that 4.55 40 isn't as concerning because he has great playing speed. Like there's guys who have a great 40, but they don't play at that speed. Whereas Treylon Burks he's playing, it seems almost faster than that, a 4.55. You watch that, the one play against Alabama where he ends up running the whole Bama secondary all the way to the end zone on like a little screen pass or slant or something. I forget what route he was running, but it was pretty impressive. And it's not something you expected out of a 4.55.
Yeah. To add to that, like his 8.5 yards after the catch was 14th among 169 wide receivers, which ended up being 92nd percentile over the past 2 seasons. So like he doesn't have to have that blazing speed. You're not bringing the man down. Like 8.5 yards after catch is pretty impressive. So it's a risky pick. I will say that it's a risky pick because it could be a bust pick. There's been lots of people and people on Twitter specifically, they're like, you know what, bust. It's a bust. He's a bust. It's a risky pick. It is. I will go with that. It's a risky pick, but it could also produce in a big way depending on where he lands.
My 2 favorite Burks related stories or anecdotes from the draft community is in his spare time, he hunts feral hogs in Arkansas without a firearm. No guns allowed in the Burks family. They're hunting feral hogs with Bowie knives and crossbows. And my second story about Burks that I really enjoy is, leading up to the combine, there was the rumor that he wears like 4XL gloves when he plays. Like we're talking like the Trojan Magnum of gloves here. Apparently this guy is just a physical freak. And then he got to the combine and his hands are like very average size, like not Magnum, not 4XL.
He's no Sky Moore. There's no way.
After hearing that, maybe he jumps up to first tier for me.
Yeah, I think that's where the break is. Myself, that's me personally, whether I agree or not. And I know a lot of people have them even significantly higher as they're 101, 102 of wide receivers, but I'm not in that category. But next on the clock here, we got Armand at the 109.
All right. At the 109 position here, I looked at the board and we had this huge wide receiver run. And yeah, you guys are saying top 5 tier. I saw it as a tier of 3 and then a tier of 2. And then after this, I wasn't as interested in the wide receivers. I was really interested in the tier 2 ones. But now I'm looking back at other positions, and I see that in a super flex league, after we did this run of wide receivers because everyone wanted to get on the wide receiver train, we have Kenny Pickett falling to the 109, which I think is great value in a super flex format. He has a good arm. He can run and move in and out of the pocket, and he seems like the most pro ready quarterback that can just jump in and go out of the quarterbacks this year. Willis is the best fantasy asset, but Kenny Pickett will be a great fantasy asset as well. I just wanted to say that, like, once I started watching film on him again, I really loved him. I loved his competitive spirit and how competitive he was. You look at that fake slide. I don't know whether he did it on purpose and planned it out, or if it was he was going to slide and then decided to keep running. Either way, he used the rules to his advantage at that point and showed a great competitive edge that you want in your quarterback.
I think he's the most pro ready. Like, if you're going to throw him in a system, he's going to have the most success this season. I don't know if he has the highest ceiling out of any of these quarterbacks, but I do think he is the most pro ready and then combined, I think, with quote unquote the package, So I could see him in a system. I know there's been conversations that, Carolina, they're looking at going to pick up Baker Mayfield, but in a position where they're coaching, like they're coaching for their jobs right now, I think that's a position where they might end up taking somebody like that because he might have the biggest year one production. He might not be most upside or fantasy upside, but I think he might come with some of the highest draft capital, right? Like you're talking about Malik Willis at 101, to be able to get Kenny Pickett at a value in the back end of the first, that's a pretty big gap for a guy that could have a similar production in the first season, at least for sure.
Yeah, and it's not like he can't run the ball. Like, you watch college and he does run the ball and he gets some pretty big gains and he can score touchdowns too. He's not like a run first type QB, but when it's in need, he definitely can do it to a high enough standard that you can have him run the ball.
Yeah, I agree. I like him. And they're kind of, like some of these quarterbacks kind of get blobbed together where it's like they have this, but they don't have this. And this quarterback has that, but he doesn't have this, and I think he has jack of all trades, master of none is my 2 cents on him, but I'm interested to see where he ends up landing. Zach, on the clock here at the 110 position.
So I was thrilled to see that Desmond Ridder fell to me at 110. Ridder is a quarterback out of the University of Cincinnati, standing 6'1", 211 pounds. Earlier when I was talking about Malik Willis, I mentioned that Willis was not my favorite quarterback. And I'm over the moon to see that Ridder fell to me, because Ridder is my favorite quarterback of this year's draft. Looking at Ridder's tape, looking at his stats, reading all the different write-ups about Ridder, I really see a Alex Smith-like player. Looking at his college career, he checks off so many boxes from the Jimmy Johnson quarterback checklist. And that checklist that Jimmy Johnson had read something that you had to start at least 3 years at the college level. Check. Had to be a team captain. Check. Stats had to have improved every year. Check. Had to have been a 2-sport athlete. Check. Ridder checks all the boxes for me, and I can see him being, while not the first, second, or maybe even third quarterback drafted, I could see him having one of the better pro careers. This season had a completion percentage of 66.4, 3,324 yards, 30 passing TDs, 8 interceptions, and a passer rating of 108.9. Now, this next part is what separates him from most of these other quarterbacks. Ritter played at the University of Cincinnati, where he ran a pro-style offense. That means he took snaps predominantly from under center, and there were little to no check with me's where the quarterback would, before he snapped the ball, look over to the coach on the sideline, and the coach would diagnose the play for him and tell him where to throw the ball or what to do. It was up to Ritter to read the defense and decide where the ball had to go. This is going to set him apart from most of the other quarterbacks, and this is one of the reasons why I think he's going to have success. Last year, Mac Jones was in a very similar position where he came from a pro-style offense where he had to process the defense pre-snap, and that's what led Mac Jones to having success. And I could see Ritter having a similar potential as a rookie. He has a 4.52 speed in the 40-yard dash, which is 95th percentile among the quarterbacks. He also has an extremely powerful lower body where he was 95th percentile in the vertical jump and 99th percentile in the broad jump. If he gets first round draft capital, which I suspect he will, this is the quarterback that he's the quarterback that I am looking to pick up near the back half of Dynasty Superflex leagues. And please, Jordan, do not release this episode or this segment until my Superflex leagues are done, because I am going to be doing my damnedest to make sure I'm able to get Desmond Ritter on my spots.
Yeah, I really, really like this pick. I was really choked. I really wanted to take him here. If this was actually like a legit draft where we're keeping these players, I would have been absolutely furious if you would have snaked me at Ritter one pick before me. I'd have been real choked, especially if he gets that draft cap. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of mock drafts, Ritter to Seattle at that, what is it, the 108, 109, whatever Seattle has. I'm trying to remember what the draft. I'm seeing a lot of Ritter takes there, which I think if he does get that really high draft capital, he might start climbing up the boards a little bit. But yeah, I like that pick a lot. I know there was conversations with even the Lions looking at him a little bit. I know that more or less the Lions are looking at that Matt Corral a little bit more, but there was some Ritter takes. I think they actually, even the Lions even hosted Ritter to their top 30 visits, did they not?
I think so. Now I'd be surprised if he got that Seattle type draft capital, but I could see a team that passes on a quarterback early in the first, possibly trading into the late first to get that fifth-year option with the rookie quarterback. So maybe Washington, maybe Seattle doesn't take a quarterback early in the draft, but maybe towards the end of the first round, they trade back in to get a Ritter.
Even Atlanta too. I won't.
Yeah.
I still think it's unlikely Atlanta takes one. I think they're going to be so bad next year. They're going to be running for 101, so they're going to probably lock up a queue next year. But I think we'll talk about that situation a little bit later on the episode. But yeah, I was pretty choked on that one. But I'm on the clock now, sitting here at what am I at? 111. We'll see 111 pick. I'm keeping the quarterback train going. To be able to get a quarterback in a super flex league at the 111 is juicy, even though I think by consensus, a lot of people think the quarterback class is weaker, obviously in comparison to last year's quarterback class. But regardless, to get a quarterback at 111, I know a few people a handful of years prior to 111 was a real good position for Lamar Jackson, and he turned out just fine. So at the 111 position, I'm going to take a quarterback as well, and I'm going to take Matt Corral out of Ole Miss. Now, he is a quarterback that intrigues me a lot, in partial to because the Lions have their names connected to him at pick 32. He would be the fourth quarterback off the board in our Superflex draft at 6'1", 205 pounds. I think the pros to this pick, he is a pinpoint accurate quarterback in the short and intermediate routes. He does have issues with the downfield accuracy. So he has a talented arm, but he lacks arm strength. He's a quarterback that early on, Had a few, I would say, knocks against him as a quarterback, but progressively got better throughout his career. He makes a lot of opportunities from his legs. He can move lots. He can evade pressure, and he's elusive in open space. So in fantasy perspective, to be able to have a guy that can move, I think that is really beneficial. But with a guy that's 6'1" and 205 stature, are you going to be able to maintain that type of contact at the NFL level? He does like to lower his body into contact in the collegiate perspective. So that is something that concerns me a little bit at the NFL level, especially with a smaller stature. But being able to be so elusive allows him to escape the pocket and keep options open. And he succeeds with, when he's out of the pocket, keeping his eyes downfield. He doesn't just tuck the ball and boogie. He's still looking to make the play and be able to stretch the ball while even though out of the pocket. He does take a lot of sacks, though. With that being said, because he's trying to make so much happen, he doesn't just throw the ball out of bounds and move along. He does take the sack, which is a knock against him in the NFL level. But at the same time, you got to take the pros with the cons. If he can boogie and make things happen, sometimes you got to take that sack for a lot of the pros that he has had in previous success. So like I mentioned, some of the cons, his arm strength, size, and downfield accuracy, but he does come with a lot of poise and a lot of leadership qualities. And in the past season, he cut his decision making, or made his decision making a lot better, cutting his interceptions from 14 to just 4 in the 2021 season. So progressively getting better, like Zach had mentioned, and decision making getting stronger. Now, I think this is a quarterback that would succeed in a redshirt rookie season underneath a NFL franchise. I don't think he's pro ready, but he has the capabilities to continue to build off of, which would allow him to be successful, which I think is an exact scenario where the Lions are at that pick 32. You have one more year of a monstrous Jared Goff contract, and Matt Corral could be the answer in upcoming seasons. I will talk about that pick later on and what I think of that, but that's why I'd be taking Matt Corral at 111 with incredible value in a super flex league. Armand, pick 112 on the clock.
All right, with pick 112, I am ending the QB run, the short little run we had going here, and I am moving back to RB. And this one might be a little bit of a spicy take to some. I think in our group chat, though, when we were kind of talking, you guys kind of agreed with me on this one. I am taking Rachaad White from Arizona State. He is a big guy. He's 6'2", 210 pounds, according to NFL Draft Buzz. And he is a great runner, I think, in my mind. He behind Kenneth Walker, I think he is the best juker and best at getting guys to miss in the box. He's not as sudden as Walker or has the top end speed, but when a guy actually does get him wrapped, he's better at breaking the tackles than Walker and driving defenders forward. And he's very shifty. To kind of go off Bridgerton here, because season 2 just came out, he is my diamond this year. I think he could be a high value pick of where you could actually get him in drafts, because he does have a high end potential to be a 3-down back in the NFL. Big body, runs hard, runs strong, is fast, and he has long arms and can catch the ball really well as well. So he is a guy that does have that 3-down potential in the NFL.
Yeah, Armin's qualifications for being a fantasy relevant running back is have the first name Rashad and the rest will take care of itself.
Armin also really, really likes guys with a low contact balance, big time.
Hey, I coach RBs. I know what you need to break tackles.
Yeah.
I play rugby.
Yeah, I will mention Armin was really hot with his takes with the RB last year, and he hit the nail on the head with a lot, especially I will mention his late take of the fantasy gold of Elijah Mitchell. He was very high on him, and that was I wouldn't say a dart throw, but to a lot of people it was very unexpected. But Armin does his deep dive on running backs, and he has a high hit rate. So when I will say when Armin is talking about some of these RBs jumping up and maybe a little bit more, he's higher on some of the guys. I definitely tune in with a lending ear, I think, because he does a pretty good work there. But I do have somebody else higher than him, so we'll get to that later. Zach, 2:01 on the clock.
All right,
we're into the 2-minute territory now too. So
yeah, I'll get my speed on here. This is somebody that may be going a little bit earlier than most would have him, but I am taking George Pickens, wide receiver out of Georgia. Pickens is 6'3", 200 pounds. Pickens broke out as a true freshman in 2019, and many projected at the conclusion of that year, if he was able to declare for the draft, he would have been wide receiver 1. And many forecasted that when he did declare, he would eventually be wide receiver 1. But due to some shaky quarterback play at Georgia, and then Pickens tearing his ACL in the spring, and only playing 63 snaps this season, he's going to be falling a little bit in the NFL draft, which will subsequently mean falling a little bit in dynasty rookie drafts. Like I mentioned earlier, with the player profile breakout age, Pickens broke out at 18.5 years old, which is 96th percentile in their database. Pickens reminds me a lot of Devontae Parker, and they profile very similarly together. When Parker was coming into the draft in 2015, he was 6'3", 202 pounds, same height and only 2 pounds heavier than Pickens. Parker had 33 1/4 inch arms. Pickens has 32 5/8 inch arms. Parker runs the 40-yard dash just a shade quicker, and their verts are very similar. But my favorite part of Pickens' game is his nastiness. Do yourself a favor and YouTube George Pickens blocking, and you will see him knocking guys on their butts at the line of scrimmage as an 18-year-old against SEC opponents. And then one last thing before I go here, in the national semifinal against, I believe it was Ohio State, Pickens suplexed a DB in the end zone. There was a loose ball in the end zone, and kind of behind the play, Pickens suplexed the closest defender to him. And if that's not a stamp of approval, I don't know what the heck is.
This I like the pick, Zach. I had 3 guys in mind. You took that pick, so I made my next one a little bit easier. I'm at the 202 position, and I'm taking a gamble. I'm taking a gamble here in more than one sense. I'm taking a gamble at the guy I want. I think might slide a little bit, and I'm also taking a gamble because this pick itself is a gamble. Now, the reason it's a gamble is because I'm making a bet on athleticism, and I'm going to take Christian Watson from North Dakota State. So he'd be the wide receiver 7 off the board at 6'4", 211 pounds, and he is fast, running a 40 at 4.36. He is an incredibly athletic specimen as a big body and a fast guy, but he comes in at, I guess, a few flaws as well. But the thing I like about his flaws are things that he can learn and things that he can work on. He has some things are sloppy routes. He struggles in contested catches, but those are things that he can work on and can become better at. He is big, he is fast, and the one thing that I do like, even though he doesn't, and we talked about this, I do like the true rookie or the early breakout. He doesn't have that in a sense, but he does have an absolute domination at the Senior Bowl. So even though he isn't that young breakout, we do like to see that if you are the late comeback, late entry, you do have the success in the Senior Bowl. Guys like Deebo Samuel, guys like Cooper Kupp, Those are type of guys that had the dominance at the Super Bowl, and then also that obviously translated into success in the NFL. This pick is strictly on draft capital and athleticism. If he gets that second or third round draft capital, the third round might be starting to slip a little bit, then I like this pick a lot because it's a bet on athleticism. But if he is a fifth, sixth, seventh, even maybe a fourth round pick, he's going to start dropping down my draft boards a little bit. But I do like Christian Watson. I like his athleticism, and he's high on my draft class.
Zach, do you got anything to add?
Like I think you nailed it on the head there. Went to North Dakota State, had a really good year with Lance in 19, and then has continued to have good success. But his showing at the Senior Bowl was exceptional, and I think that cemented himself as a first or second round pick in the NFL draft.
I hope so. If he gets that draft capital, I'm gonna be all over him, because that's that'd be nice to pair with that athleticism. Pick 203, Armand on the clock.
All right, so pick 203 here. I was really hoping Watson was actually going to fall to me here. Like you said, he's a freak athlete, and he sweeps, he runs the sweeps, he runs deep routes, he runs everything. He was phenomenal, I thought, in college based on just his athletic profile. So I had to rally here a little bit, and I ended up taking John Mechie the third. So another third on my roster here to go with Kenneth Walker the third.
At 203, the third pick of the second.
So Mechie, he's a good receiver. He was once in contention for that top wide receiver spot in this draft, and then kind of fell out of favor a little bit. So with that pedigree, you do have to give him a little bit of respect there. He has great speed. He has great agility. He's good at those underneath routes. That's kind of where he thrives is those underneath routes, and he's got a decent size. He's 6 feet, 195 pounds. So he isn't as small as some of those other receivers that we took earlier, which is good to see. Although some of the scouting that you read on him, they're concerned about his size still as well. So, but he seems all around like a good receiver, and I'm happy to take him here with that pedigree of at once being considered one of the top wide receivers in this class.
I'm just happy you didn't take my guy, so I'm hoping that I'm glad I snuck you, and I'm hoping that Zach will pass on my guy, and my strategy worked out. Anything to add there, Zach, before we move on to the next pick?
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on Mechie for a few seasons now. It started off as a Canadian wide receiver going to the SEC. That really caught my eye. And then he's had a lot of media attention just from playing at Alabama. And now Patriots Twitter is abuzz with the potential of John Mechie reuniting with Mac Jones in New England. Possibly, second round pick 54 is where he's popping up in, dozens of mock drafts with the New England beat writers. So I'm keeping, a small little bit of optimism that he ends up a Patriot and is able to continue that trend of reuniting the college quarterback with the college wide receiver for NFL success.
Yeah, how excited would you be, Zach?
Oh, I would be doing some fist pumps for sure on the couch. The dog would be. My dog's a big scaredy cat. I can't get too excited. I can't get too upset because she's sprinting downstairs.
Dogs would be barking.
Oh, Kevin Malone, would they ever?
Okay, next on the clock here, we got Zach on the clock at pick 204.
All righty. This is somebody that I am a little bit surprised has lasted this long, and I think at this spot in a dynasty draft will present huge upside, especially since it is super flex. I am taking Sam Howell, quarterback, UNC. Howell stands at 6'1", 218 pounds, and many have compared him to a, kind of like a Russell Wilson light. Obviously not comparing him to Russell Wilson now, but looking at Russell Wilson coming out of Wisconsin. Howell had a huge freshman season, breaking out at the age of 19, which was 91st percentile per player profile. Like I mentioned, has been a starter since his freshman year and was the consensus QB1 coming into this season. Had a great year last year, but this year he struggled a bit compared to last season because he lost 4 of the best skill players on last year's team to the NFL. In 2020, he graded out as the 6th best quarterback in the nation, according to PFF. And this year, PFF had him as the 15th best quarterback in the nation. This year, he had a completion percentage of 61.5, 3,050 yards, 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and a passer rating of 101.7. This year, he took a big step in the rushing department, rushing for 828 yards and 11 touchdowns. A lot of that had to do with losing Javonte Williams and losing Michael Carter. He had to, put a lot more on his shoulders. I believe that Howell has good arm talent and is able to make plays on the run, through the air, and on the ground. He did run a simplified offense at UNC with plenty of RPOs and single reads. So while he is not NFL ready at this point in the draft, the value is too good. Have him on the taxi squad, have him as your 3rd quarterback, 4th quarterback. And in a year or two, I think he's somebody that could really take a step forward and become a starter for whatever team is lucky enough to draft him.
There was conversations that he was going to be the possibly 101 based on last year, and then obviously possibly taking a step forward this year. Obviously with a little bit of a lower season this past year, that's no longer the case. But I'm very interested once again, like where he ends up and what type of offense he runs. I agree with you, Zach. I think he's got some sneaky upside, especially in super flex leagues where he might drop down draft boards a little bit. Anything to add, Armin, before we go on to the next pick?
Nope.
Okay, right on. 2:05 on the clock. I got my guy. I took a gamble. A lot of this helps with a little bit of pre-knowledge, knowing that I know Armand is not a huge fan of this guy. So I was kind of playing the draft game against Zach, hoping he wasn't going to take him. But I'm going to take the running back here, who I have running back 3. And I'm very, very happy that he slid down the draft board this far. So I'm going to take Isaiah Spiller, running back from Texas A&M. He'll be the running back 4 off the board, but he is running back number 3 in my eyes. Standing at a 6 foot flat, 217 pounds. But one thing I like about him is he's young, a 20-year-old back. So young age. To me, he passes the eye test a lot. I really like him. And then one of the big knocks for him was that he had an incredibly slow 40 speed coming into the combine, but he doesn't, like Armand kind of mentioned, and I can't remember who you're talking about on the past one there, Armand. But he passed the eye test because even though he doesn't have the fast testing speed, he does have a fast playing speed. Like when you watch his film, he doesn't look slow. And in my eyes, I see that very similar to maybe like a Kareem Hunt. And everybody kind of thought Kareem Hunt was going to be really slow, didn't have that ability to have the burst or take the ball to the house. And obviously we've seen a very successful career for Kareem Hunt so far. He is bringing a 3rd down capability. He has a good ball catcher. So he can come into a workload where he can be seen as the quote unquote workhorse back, the 3 down back. But he does have some faults. Obviously, he does have the slow testing speed, which has brought his capability down quite a bit. And he has a high fumble issue, which is something to monitor and hopefully can take care of the ball in the NFL compared to his collegiate rankings. But this is another player that, like previously mentioned on Christian Watson, I think draft capital is the most important because I see him having the highest ceiling of the draft class, but he could also have one of the lowest floors. I do see him possibly even being the number one RB based on where he goes to, and if he can take care of some of these flaws. But if he is anywhere past the third round, he's going to drop significantly off my draft board. As we know in past, if you are a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round running back, it becomes incredibly difficult for you to become successful, and teams do not have the significant commitment to you like other backs. So that's my take on Isaiah Spiller, and I'm going to let Armin rip me apart here.
All right, this is what I'll say is he is a solid back. He's not a great athlete, but he's a great football player, if that makes sense. He knows how to read the angles. He knows how to read the play. And what I said in my oh God, I'm blanking. In my analysis of him is that he gets the most out of every play that he possibly can with his athletic ability. It's not like he's reading the blocks terribly, taking bad angles and stuff. Like he's hitting the right holes. He's getting as much as he can out of the play, but then he's getting caught from behind, or he's getting pinched in between two defenders, or he doesn't have enough speed to get to the edge, but he gets as much as he can out of it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And yeah, part of this too is like we're getting significant value here at the 205 for a guy that has that high of a ceiling. I'm definitely okay taking the 205 position. You're next on the clock here, Armin, at 206.
All right. I'll just say quickly, he has a very high floor, but a low ceiling. My guy at the 206, I am taking what I consider the last quarterback that could potentially become a long-term starter in the NFL. After this, I don't think they will be long-term starting quarterbacks. Some of them might become starters for a little bit and stuff, but I think Carson Strong is the last chance in this draft to nab a quarterback that could be a long-term solution, especially in a super flex at your QB2 spot. He is Zach's cousin, not really, but you gotta throw it out there because of the name, right? But he is a good quarterback. He's not fast. He's not a runner, so he's not that fantasy top tier guy that you want to get. But if you look at his arm talent and you look at his ability to play the quarterback position, he is a really good traditional quarterback. And by that, I mean, he can drop back into the pocket. He navigates the pocket really, really well with great footwork. And he has a quick release to throw the ball, and he can fit it into tight spots, and he's got the arm strength to put it down the field. And he isn't afraid to do that either. He's a confident quarterback. And can do the job well and won't be scared at the NFL level, I don't think.
And you're buying into family stocks, exactly, which is always an addition.
Yeah, I'm trying to get invited into their Thanksgiving and Easter meals.
Zach, anything to add before we all go on to your pick here?
That's a strong pick, Armin. What can you say?
Yeah,
Ooh.
Strong as the next pick from a strong man. Zach, you're on the clock here at the 207.
So this is for, dang it, a little bit of premature analysis there. For me, this is really where there's kind of like a tier break again, I think. You had your top 4 receivers, top 5 receivers, and you kind of had 1 or 2, maybe 3 after them. And I think this is kind of that third tier of receivers. At 207, I am taking Jahan Dotson, wide receiver from Penn State. Dotson stands 5'11" and weighs in at 178 pounds. This is somebody that has played primarily on the outside at Penn State, but physically and athletically profiles as a plug-and-play NFL slot receiver. Smaller frame than some in the draft, but seems to make catches that he has no business making. The poor QB play at Penn State did an excellent job of showing off Dotson's catch radius. This year, he had 91 receptions on 138 targets, just short of 1,200 receiving yards and 13 yards per reception to go along with 12 touchdowns. Dotson is a sudden route runner that has an explosive first step after making a reception. Oftentimes, I saw the quarterbacks getting him the ball in the short passing game. He would make one cut, get the edge, and make a play. He does need to get a little bit bigger or stronger, but I think he is somebody that can contribute quite early on as a gadget or as a scripted pass where the quarterback makes the read and gets him the ball right away. Maybe starting off as that and then working his way into something bigger. I'm not going to say that I've watched Tyreek Hill's rookie season tape, but physically he looks like somebody that if he got bigger could be a Tyreek Hill where really stretches that defense in the vertical and short passing game.
I've seen his name tied to a couple teams actually in that second round, somewhere between the early and late second round, like Cleveland, Detroit, I've seen even Arizona kind of in the mix a little bit as well.
And I've seen him even earlier than that. Like I've seen him late first round in some drafts for teams that are really targeting that slot receiver need.
Yeah, I mean, he was a guy that I was so interested in, especially early on, and then I think a few other names kind of just started sneaking into the picture, and I kind of got a little bit more excited over other guys. But he's very intriguing to me. I think he's something I'm going to monitor definitely in the draft in the day two there. I'm next on the clock here at 2:08. This one, I'm happy to take this guy because much the same as Dotson, I'm very intrigued on this guy. He's very green. We got a lot of room to grow and I think develop. And he's got the biggest hands you'll ever see. He's the lies you heard about Burks are the truth you'll hear about more. And I'm going to take Sky Moore out of Western Michigan, the 10th wide receiver off the board. And I'm going to call him Mega Hands. In reference to bench warmers when they talk about Mega Mitt when he's running around the sports store with the gigantic baseball glove, because this man's going to catch every ball thrown his way because his hands are monstrous. At 10 1/4 inches, he has one of the biggest hands you'll ever see, and he is very, very good up the middle. And there's not going to be a lot of balls thrown his way that he's not going to catch. He is small in stature at 5'10", 195 pounds. And he is very green. I did mention that he's small in stature and he's green. He's got lots of room to improve and a lot to learn. But he is a good route runner, and he does have a good route tree. And with that capability, with those size and room to grow, I'm interested in at more or less landing spot, not so much draft capital, because if he lands in a situation with a very, very crowded room, he doesn't have that opportunity to blossom, where I think a lot of NFL reps are going to benefit this man. Now, with a small stature, he might have issues with press coverage, but I'm very, very interested in this prospect of Sky Moore and Western Michigan, and obviously to just talk about the man with the biggest hands. And you talk about basketball players and those big mitts and palming basketballs. You take some of these big mitts and you put that against a football, we might see some ridiculous athletic catches because that ball's in the air, that one hand goes up, he's probably coming down with it. So I like Sky Moore, and I'm really interested at where he might end up. I saw some mocks to maybe New Orleans in the second. I'm not sure if I like that as much because that's a similar role that I think with those slant routes that MT plays. But a guy that's green might be able to learn from a guy that's a good veteran receiver like MT. So I do like Sky Moore, and he will be somebody I monitor come draft season. Anything to mention before I go to Armin's pick? All right, Armin, 2:09 on the clock.
All right. At 209 here, I had a lot of names that were going through my mind. I think at this point, you're starting to look more at upside rather than that floor, because anybody with a high floor is probably already taken. So high floor doesn't necessarily hold as much value here as much as those high ceiling guys. I ended up going with an RB from South Dakota State. And this one is a pick to not only get me invited to Thanksgiving and Easter dinner, but Christmas dinner as well. I went with Pierre Strong Jr. He is a blazing fast RB. He put up the highest 40 or the fastest 40 time at 4:37. He's fast and sudden. He could potentially have the best home run hitting ability out of any RB in this draft class. And that means high ceiling, right? With that ability that he has for reading and then hitting the hole and getting to the end zone as quick as possible. It's hard to beat him in this class. What I didn't see from him was a lot of broken tackles because he played in a weaker conference. Most of his broken tackles were just purely his acceleration. A guy would get kind of close and he would just run away from them as fast as possible, and they wouldn't even be able to get a hand on him. But he does have some decent tackle breaking. There was a few times where you did see him get meat in the hole or something like that, where he was able to actually show his tackle breaking ability, and it was good, but it didn't pop. It wasn't like a, whoa, that guy, like, he can break tackles. It was more of a, okay, he can break a tackle if need be. And because he did play those lesser opponents, he does have some question marks around him, because his O-line did open up some huge holes. He found the right holes, but they were always really big holes that his O-line opened up for him. So you didn't really get an opportunity to analyze whether he was able to read blocks that well either, just because of that. That's kind of my analysis. Do you guys have any questions about Zach's second cousin here?
Yeah, you're just you're buying into the family. You're gonna get season tickets in multiple stadiums, I think, with the addition of Zach. You gonna take Zach at your 212 too, or what? Complete the trifecta.
301.
Sorry, Zach, you don't get the second round bonus.
Shucks.
All right, next pick on the clock. We got Zach coming in with, what pick is this? The 210, rounding up Zach's last pick.
It's about time that we took a tight end in this draft. So at 210, I am taking Trey McBride, tight end from Colorado State. McBride stands 6'4", 245 pounds. Both size-wise and production-wise coming out of college. He reminds me a little bit of a tight end that I think we're all pretty fond of in Adam Trotman. Over the past 3 seasons, McBride has been a top 8 tight end according to PFF, topping out at the tight end number 1 on this most recent season. This season, McBride dominated his team's target share, accounting for 34% of their targets and a whopping 38% of their passing yards. This season, McBride had 91 receptions on 122 targets, good for 1,100 yards, and a respectable 1 touchdown. McBride is an all-around tight end that can play inline, and in the slot. He routinely made plays downfield and has the athleticism to threaten seams as well as across the middle. From what I saw on his highlight tape, he is a capable blocker, but not a willing or a dominant blocker. So this isn't going to be a guy that is on the field at all times, maybe like a Gronk would be. But McBride is somebody that I think, given some time in the NFL weight room, given some time practicing against better competition, is somebody that at the end of the second round it's worth a gamble on. This is exactly where last season I took Pat Freiermuth, and I'm very happy a year later with not only the production but the potential that Freiermuth has going forward.
Yeah, I'm choked. This is who I definitely wanted to take. I wanted to stop the slide. I like him quite a bit, and I like what they mentioned about Freiermuth. He was somebody that I think was a bit of a sleeper last year in the shadow of Kyle Pitts, and obviously, if you ended up picking him up late in the second, you're incredibly happy. And I got snaked in the draft on Freiermuth last year, and I got snaked in the draft today from Zach on McBride. So. Anything bad there's Armand, or should I go to 211?
McBride is a good value pick here. He's really the only tight end worth mentioning today, but he does have potential to be a great fantasy asset and dynasty asset at the tight end position, where sometimes it's hard to find a good tight end. So getting him is a great option, especially if you are a tight end needy team.
That being said, I do like Dulcich a little bit. Like, I don't think I do like Dulcich. I do like Likely. I mean, they're down the boards, like I think as late round dart throws maybe a little bit. I mean, McBride is head and shoulders above the two, but I do like those two as maybe those late round dart throws where you might be able to find a little bit of magic. I mean, we're not looking at, especially talking about this, we're dynasty outlook here, so we're not looking at year one production by these two. I mean, in redrafts, I'm not jumping at these guys by any stretch of imagination, but they are things that I do think I'd be looking at. So at 211 here, my last pick. I had a hard time here because I was trying to fly around a little bit of names I liked and names I'd be looking for value, and I ended up settling on this last pick of Zamir White. And I think this is a riskier pick as well too, but Armin kind of hit the nail on the head. You know, you can take these later ones, you can take a little bit of a risk for potential production. And coming out of a class of Georgia running backs that's, you know, they like to run a bit of a committee. I think he's going to have a little extra tread on the tire and has upside for room to grow. Now, coming off of two different ACL injuries is risky, and not the same knee, two different knees. It does come with risk. But at a 5'11", 215 pounds, he was a former 5-star recruit. And like I mentioned, taking the two ACLs ended up limiting his touches a little bit and sharing the backfield. But he's only had 3 career fumbles in his entire collegiate career, which is a huge check mark for teams that knowing that you can be able to protect the ball. He does come with a little bit of lack of passing background, but I think that is more a tip in the cap of Cook and less in the cap of White, because it does come in a backfield where it's a shared workload, and that workload can come at maybe a potential because of they're trying to conserve him with 2 ACLs, or because that's just the way Georgia does things. They do like to share the backfield. I think he comes with a huge potential workload. He's a big body and he runs well. He's good vision. He's agile, and he's well balanced with the low center of gravity and contact balance, and he's very explosive. So he has attributes that I like as a running back. Now, he may profile as maybe like a Ramondre Stevenson type back, but I know Ramondre obviously came in with some solid fantasy value, and I think Zamir White, coming from Georgia, has some room to grow and become a strong value. Once again, I think draft capital tell maybe some teams like him, they end up jumping on him a little bit early, kind of like the Pats did with Ramondre Stevenson in comparison, or maybe he falls down draft boards into the 6th round, and we're not talking the same thing about Zamir White. But I like that he's a 5-star recruit. I like the attributes he has. Just a little bit of concern with the injury history. And out of here, Armand, I'm pretty sure I think I snuck my peek in here. I think I know you're going with this one, so maybe I just go right to your pick, or what?
Yeah, sure.
212, last pick of the draft. Armand's on the clock.
All right. Well, with this last pick of the draft, there's a few guys left on the board that I wanted to talk about here. And that's kind of where I ended up picking this guy, is I did want to talk to him. And I think we needed to talk to him, or not talk to him directly, talk about him.
That would be sweet, though.
Yeah. But I was looking at 4 different RBs here. It was Brian Robinson, Jerome Ford, Zonovan Knight, and then James Cook. And I ended up picking James Cook because of that high upside that we've been talking about. The brother of Dalvin Cook. So you know what his brother has done in the NFL, and James is a little bit, I think he's like an inch taller, but he's also like about 10 or 15 pounds lighter than his brother. But he is a pure home run hitter out of Georgia here. He's also the most accomplished pass catcher of all the backs in this class. So even though he doesn't have that traditional 3-down look to him, we've seen a lot of backs in the past few years kind of go from that 3-down looking like back, or 3rd down looking like back, to into an actual productive 3-down back, full workload guy. And I think James Cook could have that ability to make that transition as well at the NFL level because of that home run hitting ability. He does a lot of pass catching, so in an offense that throws the ball a lot, he'd be really well off. And he has that speed, and he knows how to use it in the open field to go for long runs. He lacks tackle breaking ability and juke moves. They didn't really show up on his film at all, but he made up for that by reading the blocks and the angles really well when he was running. He any of his plays that went for long, he did not get touched because he just read the block perfectly and then accelerated and got the angle on the guy and went up the field for a score. But he went down pretty quick once he got touched.
I think he is the best pass catcher in the draft for obviously for running backs. I think that, so I think that comes with his potential, and I think that brings in another opportunity for him. So I'll put that feather in his cap as well too there for Yarman. I do think he kind of profiles more of as like a scat back type guy, but does have the ability to obviously grow and develop, because we've seen the family tree, like we know what's possible. Not that I'm saying he is going to be a Dalvin Cook, but we've seen what the family tree is capable of, and he is capable of putting on size, I think so.
Yeah.
Anything to mention here, Zach, before we wrap off our draft and then go into our hot takes of who we want to throw in here?
Yeah, I think just our little exercise here really highlights, I guess in my mind, the strength or the fun part about this draft is, unlike in years past, there's going to be a lot of variance in how teams have these guys stacked, and I think that could lead to a lot of changes in how we value players. And the depth here this year at wide receiver is very exciting in my mind.
You're not on fire, Ricky Bobby. I'm on fire.
So I know I didn't say we were going to do ice cold hot takes, but we're going to do it anyways in a similar sense. We're going to transition a little bit away from fantasy and more or less into NFL takes here. And we're going to draft based on our NFL teams. So my lines, we have 2 picks. I'll start with the 2nd overall, and then I'll transition to 32nd after everybody else is done. Then Armin Vikings are at 11, and then Zach's Pats are at 21. So we're going to transition a little bit away from the fantasy, more into our teams and NFL franchises. So and with the lines, we're in an interesting position at the 102 because more or less we're waiting to see what happens. I know with draft odds right now and betting odds, they have Hutchinson as the 1st overall pick, and I really want the Lions to have Hutchinson. So best case scenario, I have Aiden Hutchinson, that is the edge rusher for Michigan, going at the 102 to the Lions. There's been rumors that Trayvon Walker is going to be possibly sneaking into that 101 contention, and also that they might be taking a potential offensive lineman as well. So either of those 2 scenarios happen, I'm really, really happy with Hutchinson falling to the Lions, and they're going to run their ticket at 102. If Hutchinson's not available, I'm very happy taking Trayvon Walker. I think he comes with a higher ceiling, but a little more risk coming from a Georgia defense that is bolstered and has a lot of weapons, where Michigan's defense isn't that strong, isn't that solid. So Hutchinson is the guy. I think he's going to have a solid career, but I think his ceiling is capped a little bit. So the Lions at 102, best case scenario. We're taking Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan. Armand, Minnesota Vikings, pick number 11. What do you got?
All right. So the last few years, Minnesota has had kind of you could say a crappy defense, especially for Viking tradition, right? We're usually a good defensive team, and that's kind of why I liked the Vikings and why they're my team. Is I like defense a lot, actually. I like teams that play good hard defense. So I am hoping that they fix that this year in the draft at pick 11. I know there's rumors that Trevon Walker goes early in the draft, but right now on CBS, he's still ranked 13. So there's a chance he could fall to pick 11. And I'm just crossing my fingers and hoping that happens. He will help stop the run. He's a great run defender. And that is where their defense was the worst last year. I think I saw that they were 29th in the league in run defense. And then, a good pass rush, which Trevon Walker should hopefully help with the pass rush, makes your corners look that much better. So he should help out in both aspects of the defense. And yeah, I'm just hoping Trevon Walker makes it to the Vikings at pick 11.
Yeah, well, if I don't get Hutchison, you're not getting Walker. Nobody's happy. Zach, at pick 21, Pats, what are they doing?
So unlike in recent years, the Pats have a few holes that holes that I think they need to patch up. And one of their biggest holes is in the secondary at cornerback. For years, Belichick and co have played a tight man-to-man defense. But looking at who they have brought in this offseason, many people suspect that they might shift to a more zone-orientated defense, trying to lock down the speedy, dynamic receivers that are in their division and in the conference at large. So I think if they go this route, it's going to point to them staying as a man-to-man defense. And my dream draft fit would be cornerback Trent McDuffie. Let me just put it out there. I would much rather have Sauce Gardner or Stingley, but I don't think those guys are realistic targets at 21. But I do think McDuffie is a realistic target for them. Cornerback coming out of University of Washington, about 5'1", just under 200 pounds, maybe a little bit small for what they've had in the past in their man-to-man corners on the outside. But this guy is a competitor, hasn't met a tackle that he hasn't liked, good man-to-man instincts. Because he's a little bit smaller, can get boxed out a little bit. But he's somebody that I think if they are able to get him would signal staying at that style of defense that they've played for so long. But I wouldn't be surprised if he goes before pick 21 also, as he's in the past couple of months has really climbed up draft boards. So fingers crossed McDuffie lasts until 21 and that the Pats take him at 21.
He's not actually 5'1", right?
Did I say 5'1"?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 5'11".
Okay.
I was like, no wonder he gets boxed out. Okay, Zach.
Got those moon boots on.
Yeah, pick 21. Okay, McDuffie or Williams?
I think they can do it with who they have at receiver. They got to go McDuffie.
Oh, exactly that. I thought for sure you were going to swing there, but that's thinking with the right head there. That's for sure.
That's some phrasing for sure. Good job.
And then I get one extra pick here because my Lions aren't very good and they sold out my boy Matthew Stafford. So they get the addition of one extra first-round pick. And I've had a hard time with this one. And I think I'm going to be okay either or. But I think my dream scenario is getting that Nakobe Dean linebacker from Georgia. I think he helps bolster the defense. And that's what Dan Campbell wants to do, is really build up that defense, and then we can focus on the offense in either free agency or the upcoming draft in the following year. There's also some depth in offensive pieces in this draft that we can try and scoop up in the second round. Some nice wide receivers. We don't have to try and jump there. But here's the thing. I will guarantee that in the second round pick, they will not take a quarterback. There's no way at pick 34, because if you're going to take a quarterback, you take him with the 32nd pick to gain that 5th-year option. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm looking at a lot of mock drafts where a lot of people are trying to put him at the 34th pick, and that just makes no sense whatsoever. There's no way that happens. If they are going to take a Q, it happens at pick 32. And it just rhymes and it's catchy, and that's just why they're going to do it. So if they do take a quarterback, I've seen a lot of Matt Corral. I mentioned that a little bit. I don't know if I like it in a sense. It makes sense because you're going to put him in an opportunity to learn and behind Jared Goff, and then he can be the successor the upcoming season. But I also don't think the Lions are going to be very good this year. And with a really healthy quarterback class coming in 2023, I think the potential of them maybe trying to wait and get one of those premier quarterbacks and giving Jared Goff one more opportunity, and then taking maybe a Carson Strong in the 3rd round or something of that sort makes a little bit more sense. So I do like bolstering the defense. I like Dean a lot. So I do hope that the Lions take him at pick 32. So I think that is my dream scenario. And go Lions. There's my Lions talk of the podcast. Can't go on without it. Anything to add here, fellas, before we wrap this one up? It's a little bit of a long one, but the draft one is always a little bit long.
Yeah, you held your Lions take in pretty good till the end there.
Yeah.
And it was kind of designed for you to talk about the Lions anyway. So
might go one
kudos
episode
to you.
without it. We'll see.
Hats off.
I'll wrap it up. Big thanks to everybody for listening. Pay attention to social media. We'll be dropping off some social media stuff here right away for a draft day special. Remember, you get yourself a hat, some rookie cards, and an opportunity to play with us in the charity league upcoming season for free, a free entry. So pay attention to that. But that'll do it for episode number 46. Thank you very much for everybody for listening, paying attention, and following us along on social media. On behalf of Armin, Zach, and myself, and the 306 Fantasy Football team, thank you for listening, everybody. Take care, and let's talk soon.